0. When the morning of the third day arrived, the crisp sound of a bell echoed in the ears of all the apothecaries in the Apothecary Guild. When the bell rang, all the apothecaries in the Apothecary Guild instantly became lively. All of them tidied their clothes and prepared to register. Xiao Yan, who heard the bell, put on his clothes, pushed open the door and walked out. There were already many alchemists in the corridor, led by their respective leaders to the registration place. Ji Yun was also standing outside. Bai Qian, who had not seen him for 3 days, stood beside him. When she saw Xiao Yan come out, the latter smiled faintly. When Fu Zan ran out of the room excitedly, Ji Yun coughed lightly and led the 3 downstairs. Today, we finally know that those genius alchemists are here. Looking at the bustling crowd around him, Xiao Yan couldn't help but feel a burning sensation in his heart. After consuming all 4 green pattern pills in the past 3 days, Xiao Yan had successfully advanced to the 2nd monarch spirit. He had even touched the boundary of the 3rd monarch spirit. Naturally, there were advantages and disadvantages as well. Because of the continuous consumption of green pattern pills, ordinary green pattern pills were no longer useful to him. I wonder what grade of medicine pill I can refine now. He could feel the origin monarch chi filling his body. Xiao Yan was also uncertain in his heart. He did not dare to make a conclusion so easily. It should not be a problem to refine a grade 4 5-star medicine pill. As for a 6-star medicine pill, Xiao Yan could not guarantee that he could successfully refine it. Under Ji Yun's lead, the few of them followed the crowd and passed through the square, entering a large palace that had never been opened before. Looking at the 400-plus alchemists in the hall, Xiao Yan turned his head and casually looked around. For a moment, he also found some acquaintances. Li Lin, Fu Qing of Mercenary Corps, and Yu Cheng, who had been knocked unconscious by Xiao Yan's punch, were all standing in the hall with their teacher or leader. As expected of an alchemist. It seems like he has recovered. Xiao Yan's eyes swept across the gloomy face of Yu Cheng in the distance and chuckled. As his gaze shifted, he looked elsewhere. When his gaze shifted to a corner of the hall, Xiao Yan's brows suddenly raised, and then the corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. There, the blue-haired youth who had met Xiao Yan before was smiling with one hand on his back. With the folding fan in his other hand, he looked at all the alchemists in the hall with a smile on his face. Behind him, there were only 2 people who looked similar to him. When the blue-haired young man's eyes met Xiao Yan's, the former sneered disdainfully, then looked elsewhere. When Xiao Yan saw this, he also laughed in his heart. He became more and more curious about the blue-haired youth's strength. Buzz. A moment later, the sound of a bell resounded across the large hall. Everyone involuntarily quieted down, after which, everyone saw 3 old men slowly walking up to the tall platform in front of everyone. When the various city leaders below saw this, they led their own team members and consciously stood in front of the old man. They seemed to have some sort of order. I think all of you are very familiar with me. I am the chairman of Spiritual Sky City's Alchemist Guild, Li Daoyuan. Let's not talk about anything else. Today is the registration day of pill competition. The official competition will be held 2 days later. At that time, the information of the contestants below will be provided. You can use these 2 days to understand your opponent in detail. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will be able to fight 100 battles without losing a single battle. The leader of the 3 elders, an old man with white hair and beard, said with a hearty smile. After that, he waved his hand and over 40 registrators came out from the back of the hall. Everyone must abide by the rules and not cause any trouble. If anyone offends this rule, they will be disqualified from the pill competition. After introducing the registration process, Li Daoyuan waved his sleeve and spoke in a deep voice. After which, he nodded to the other 2 old men and left first. The remaining 2 old men sat on the stage and maintained the order of registration. The process of registration was far more complicated than Xiao Yan had expected. One needed to extract the age of the blood medium and test the strength of one's soul. A person would need at least 5 minutes to complete the entire procedure. No wonder so many registrators are needed. It's really troublesome. Xiao Yan looked around. Everyone was waiting for the registration in boredom. The order of registration started according to the previous year's pill competition ranking. Xiao Yan and the others were naturally placed last. After the people in the hall left one after another, it was finally Xiao Yan and the other 2's turn. However, what surprised Xiao Yan was that the blue-haired youth and the others also started to register slowly and leisurely. This guy, Xiao Yan muttered to himself. He then whispered to Bai Qian, who was at the front of the line, last year's pill competition. The last place in the mercenary corps was that one? Bai Qian pondered for a moment. She said softly, it should be the mercenary corps of Wushan City in Lanning County. What's wrong? Xiao Yan shook his head and asked in surprise, why isn't it the mercenary corps of Spirit Sky City? Bai Qian laughed and said, you think too highly of the mercenary corps. Not all the mercenary corps have the ability to support alchemists. There were so many teams participating in the competition, but only 7 or 8 teams belonged to the mercenary corps. Those who dared to come were all extraordinary. Last time, there were only 7 or 8 teams that belonged to the mercenary corps. The Spirit Sky City and the mercenary corps from the Wushan City were ranked last in the competition. As the mercenary corps, it was not a big deal for them to win the competition. The Spirit Sky City's alchemist guild was a little unreasonable. As he spoke, Fu Zan had already announced his name. Bai Qian hurriedly withdrew her mind and threw herself into the examination. Turning her head, she saw that the blue-haired youth also stood up and left with his 2 followers who had already finished the examination. They swaggered out. After the blue-haired young man left, the registrar hurriedly came to the stage and handed the list to an old man with a shocked expression. The latter followed his instructions and saw the blue-haired young man's test results. His expression changed slightly and opened his mouth. The old man left his seat with a solemn expression and walked to the back hall. While Xiao Yan was wondering, Bai Qian had finished the test. Xiao Yan quickly calmed his mind and stood in front of the registrar. Release your soul power. The registrar's tone was emotionless. At the same time, he picked up a new silver needle and said, give me your hand. Xiao Yan did as he was told. All of his soul power flowed out from between his eyebrows. The registrar closed his eyes. After carefully feeling it for a moment, he nodded. His cold tone changed a little. Early alien realm soul. As he spoke, the silver needle had already pierced through Xiao Yan's palm. A drop of blood was instantly absorbed by the silver needle after it flowed out. The blood was dripped into the special device beside him. A moment later, a few eye-catching words appeared on the crystal ball in front of the device. 8, with 6. The registrar was stunned when he saw the big words on the crystal ball. He looked at Xiao Yan in disbelief. His face was filled with shock. Ji Yun, who was beside him, was also shocked when he saw it. He suddenly remembered what Wei Jun had told him. This guy seemed to have advanced to the fighting monarch of lower realm. This kid, how did he pass the 3-step soul transfer? Ji Yun looked at Xiao Yan with shock in his eyes. He had vaguely seen the danger of the 3-step soul transfer in the ancient books. It was an act that could kill anyone. Without the help of an expert, it was impossible to succeed. Seeing the surprised expression on the registrar's face, Xiao Yan looked at the number in the crystal ball and immediately understood. He then sighed. He had been in the Great World for almost 9 years. It was not far from the 15-year deadline of the Holy Rank trial. Luckily, he was not far from the Yunluo Academy. He would definitely be able to reach the appointed time according to the stipulated time. After recording Xiao Yan's data, the registrar hesitated for a moment. Seeing Ji Yun bringing Xiao Yan and the other 2 out, he ran to the stage and handed the list to the last elder. The old man was looking at the data of the blue-haired young man in his hand and was deep in thought. Suddenly, he saw another registrar take a list. Sighing lightly, the old man took it over to take a look. His expression instantly became extremely interesting. Then, as if he had thought of something, he raised his head and looked at Ji Yun and the others who were about to leave. He said in a clear voice, "Participant, Xiao Yan, I have something to discuss with you." Quote, 2 At this moment, there were only Xiao Yan, the other 3, and a few registrators in the empty hall. When they heard the old man suddenly calling him by his last name, Xiao Yan couldn't help but be startled. Ji Yun and the others also turned their heads in confusion. "You are the chairman of Spirit Sky City, Ji Yun, right?" The old man took a look at the list of names related to Xiao Yan in his hand, looked up at Ji Yun, and said with a smile, "How about you ask Xiao Yan to come with me for a while?" Ji Yun subconsciously nodded his head when he heard this. He then looked at Xiao Yan. He was an experienced man, and he instantly realized that this might be a good opportunity for the Spirit Sky City. Anyone could feel that it was a good opportunity to be welcomed by a powerful figure of the Spiritual Sky City's Alchemist Association with a smile on his face. Xiao Yan didn't hesitate. Subconsciously, he knew that this might have something to do with the blue-haired youth. Perhaps, he could know more about the youth's strength. He quickly walked forward and cupped his hands towards the old man. Young Xiao Yan, greetings, great master. The old man took a look at the information about Xiao Yan in his hand. A hint of joy emerged in his eyes, and the sadness in his eyes dissipated. He said in a friendly manner, "Come with me." After saying that, he led the way and walked towards the back of the hall. When Xiao Yan saw this, he quickly followed behind. Fu Zan watched the two of them leave, and couldn't help but look at Ji Yun with a puzzled look. Ji Yun ignored him, and looked at the direction of the back of the hall. He was lost in thought. After following the old man to the back palace, the old man handed the list of the blue-haired youth to Xiao Yan and said, "This is the reason why I called you here. Take a look." Xiao Yan looked at the list made of special materials in his hand. The blue-haired young man's appearance was clearly shown on the list. There was a trace of a wild and unruly smile at the corner of his mouth, as if he had declared his boldness to ignore everything. Li Zan, representing Wushan City in the competition. Age 18. Alien Realm Soul. Middle stage. After reading the information about the blue-haired young man, Xiao Yan was shocked. The soul power of a middle period of alien stage was enough to concoct a 5th-rank medicine pill. If this was really the case, then there was no point for the pill competition to compete with him. No one was a match for him. Middle period of alien stage, I didn't expect that kid to be so strong. When the old man saw the shocked expression on Xiao Yan's face, he couldn't help but smile bitterly. I really didn't expect that. Xiao Yan nodded his head honestly and said, "If that's the case, I don't think the master will be able to help even if he calls the kid over." The gap between each grade of the medicine pill was extremely huge. Within the first tier of the medicine pill, there was still a possibility of them winning by relying on the effects of the medicine pill. However, it was obviously impossible to win the 5th-rank medicine pill with a 4th-grade medicine pill. The old man was silent for a moment. Then, he let out a sigh. "I don't know what to do either, but this year, I absolutely can't let the Alchemist of Mercenary Corps win the championship. Therefore, I'm going to bring you to President Li's place. With your talent, I'll see what you can do." He looked at a grand hall not far away from the passageway. That should be the Spiritual Sky City's Alchemist Guild. Xiao Yan pondered for a moment, then said, "If my guess is correct, the Spiritual Sky City will send out 5 alchemists. Those 5 should be genius alchemists. Are they not enough to deal with Li Zan?" The old man shook his head and said with a bitter smile, "The soul of a middle period of alien stage is not something that an early alien realm can defeat. If Li Zan didn't make some preparations, he would have won the competition with ease. At that time, the Spirit Heaven Mansion will become the laughingstock of the Starfield. Therefore, the alchemists of the Spirit Heaven Mansion had to work together to deal with him. Your age and your talent." Even the 5 of them had no choice but to admit defeat. After listening to the old man's words, Xiao Yan picked up Li Zan's information and started reading it. This guy was actually so powerful. After the time it takes for half an incense stick to burn, Xiao Yan was led by the old man to Li Daoyuan's room. There were already 2 men and 2 women in the room. The old man who had left earlier was sitting opposite of Li Daoyuan. Both of them had serious expressions on their faces. When everyone saw the old man bring a young man in, they couldn't help but feel slightly shocked. "It's him." Zhou Gushan, who was standing at the front, frowned when he saw Xiao Yan. He then said respectfully to the old man, "Greetings, Marshal Uncle Wu." The old man looked at Zhou Gushan and smiled. Then, he walked to Li Daoyuan's side and pointed at Xiao Yan. He handed the information of Xiao Yan to Li Daoyuan, who had a solemn expression on his face. Taking advantage of this small gap, Xiao Yan couldn't help but look at the 4 people beside him. All of them were wearing green alchemist robes. The leading man had black hair that draped over his shoulders. He was extremely handsome, and he also looked at the handsome man behind him. As for the 2 girls at the back, one of them was tall and slender. They looked at Xiao Yan with no emotion in their eyes. The other one seemed to be quite weird. She was looking at Xiao Yan with a smile on her face. Both of them were extremely rare beauties. 8 years old, early alien realm soul. Li Daoyuan looked at Xiao Yan's information in his hand and was slightly shocked. He looked at Xiao Yan and pondered for a moment. He said with some uncertainty, Are you breaking through to the fighting monarch of lower realm? Seeing Xiao Yan nod his head, Li Daoyuan could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. He said in disbelief, what the 3-step soul transfer said is actually true. Little guy, who was the one who helped you transform your soul energy? Hearing the urgency in Li Daoyuan's voice, Xiao Yan pondered for a moment. Then, he said, when I first arrived in the great world, I accidentally entered a secret realm. The master of the secret realm was an old man, because I told him about the lower realm. In return, I helped you with the 3-step soul transfer. After that, he disappeared without a trace. As he spoke, Xiao Yan was calm and collected. He did not feel nervous at all. Sensing that Xiao Yan's physiological functions did not change at all, Li Daoyuan also believed what Xiao Yan said. After pondering for a moment, he sighed and said, You little fellow, you really got lucky. I'm afraid that even I can only look up to that old man's strength. That's not the case. Teacher's strength is at the Supreme Saint level. It's not something you can compare with. He laughed in his heart, but Xiao Yan still did not show any expression on his face. Since the legend of the 3-step soul transfer is true, it means that you can concoct pills beyond your level. Right? Li Daoyuan stood up and walked in front of Xiao Yan. Seeing Xiao Yan nod his head, a trace of joy flashed across Li Daoyuan's eyes. He thought for a while and said to Zhou Gushan, Go and call Xiao Yu over. Zhou Gushan nodded his head and looked at Xiao Yan in surprise. After that, he left in a hurry. The other 3 men were also shocked. They said goodbye to Li Daoyuan and left as well. The legendary 3-step soul transfer is actually real. It's the one called Xiao Yan. Doesn't that mean he is even stronger than eldest senior brother? After coming out of Li Daoyuan's room, the petite girl couldn't help but mutter. When the handsome man heard this, he sighed and smiled. Impossible. Eldest senior brother is able to refine a grade 4 7-star medicine pill. However, if he can jump ranks to refine Gushan's, then he should be slightly stronger than senior brother Gushan. And that Li Zan, the sole power of a middle period of alien stage, this is simply bullying. The girl who spoke earlier pouted and said with a wronged expression. Lu Ying snorted in annoyance and anger. She gritted her teeth and said, We can't let those bastards from the mercenary corps win the championship. After saying that, she left angrily. Looking at Lu Ying's back as she left, the man let out a helpless sigh. Just Li Zan alone had made these so-called genius alchemists of spiritual Sky City feel incomparably powerless. Mid-alien realm soul, none of them had the qualifications to be his opponent. Martial uncle, senior disciple Xiao Yu is here. Just as Li Daoyuan was deep in thought with his eyes closed, Zhou Gushan knocked on the door and walked in. A man with an ordinary face and a serious expression walked in as well. 1-inch student greets teacher. The man behind Zhou Gushan looked sharply at Xiao Yan and took a few steps forward to greet Li Daoyuan respectfully. How is it? You can refine the 7-star medicine pill now, right? Li Daoyuan stared at his most proud disciple for a while. His tightly knitted brows gradually relaxed as he said softly. Xiao Yu nodded his head indifferently. There was no trace of joy on his face. He said in a low voice. On the way here, junior brother Zhou told the students that Li Zan's soul strength has reached the middle period of alien stage. I won't hide it from the teacher. I am indeed not a match for him. After listening to Xiao Yu's words, Li Daoyuan wasn't depressed at all. There was a huge gap between the middle period of alien stage and the early alien realm. Even a genius like Xiao Yu wouldn't be able to surpass it. His name is Xiao Yan, an alchemist of Spirit Sky City. His talent is much greater than yours. Li Daoyuan pointed at Xiao Yan who was standing beside him. Xiao Yu's facial expression did not change at all. He only nodded slightly at Xiao Yan and looked at Li Daoyuan. Since teacher has called his student here, he must have something important to do. Xiao Yan also looked at Li Daoyuan. There was also some anxiety in his heart. The soul power of a middle period of alien stage was not something that an early stage soul like them could defeat. Li Daoyuan did not want Li Zan to win the championship. He also wanted to fight for the first place. Now, both Li Daoyuan and Xiao Yan were extremely anxious. Li Daoyuan pondered for a moment, then said in a low voice, Li Zan represents the mercenary corps of Wushan City. His strength is difficult for you all to defeat him. Although it is against the rules of the competition, This is the only way to prevent that guy from becoming the champion of pill competition. After saying that, Li Daoyuan looked at Xiao Yan. With a solemn expression, he said, "Although you are unwilling, you are still the alchemist who represents the Alchemist Association. Furthermore, you are the only one who stands out from the rest of the applicants. That's why I asked you to come here and try to surpass Li Zan. What happened here? You are not allowed to mention it to anyone, or else I will personally kill you." At the end of his words, a strong killing intent emerged on Li Daoyuan's face. Boundless killing intent surged towards Xiao Yan, even though he had been tempered by the prestige power spell. At this moment, cold sweat broke out all over his body. This strength, I'm afraid he has at least reached the monarch cultivation. How can he be so frightening? Taking a deep breath, Xiao Yan hurriedly nodded his head. Due to his weak strength, the prestige power spell wasn't strong enough to withstand the pressure of a monarch cultivation warrior. However, when Li Daoyuan's qi was rushing towards him, the prestige power spell was actually unable to absorb it. Li Daoyuan smiled and nodded his head when he saw this. After that, he said with a serious expression, "The three of you should be the most likely candidates to win this year's pill competition except for Li Zan. Zhou Gushin's strength should be slightly weaker, but he can't be underestimated. Follow me." After saying that, Li Daoyuan stood up and pressed on the wall behind him a few times. In the next moment, a wooden door suddenly appeared in front of everyone's surprised eyes. When Xiao Yu saw this, his eyes slightly moved. He had followed Li Daoyuan for nearly 10 years and did not know that there was some secret hidden in his teacher's room. It seemed that Li Daoyuan really had some means to increase their strength 2 days before the competition began. When he thought of this, even with Xiao Yu's indifference, he could not help but feel a trace of excitement in his heart. Zhou Gushin's reaction was even more intense than Xiao Yu's. He looked at the wooden door on the wall with some surprise, then looked at Li Daoyuan's serious expression. He could not help but feel happy in his heart. It seemed that it was not impossible for eldest senior brother to beat that Li Zan. Compared to the two of them, Xiao Yan was not much surprised. However, seeing Li Daoyuan's way of doing things and his tone just now, it seemed like he really had a way. With this thought in mind, Xiao Yan did not hesitate anymore and followed Li Daoyuan into the room. Behind the wooden door was an empty space. It could only accommodate 4 or 5 people. The surrounding was a breathtaking spatial turbulence. Terrifying ripples of death quietly spread out in the spatial turbulence, causing one's heart to feel numb. Seeing the surprised gazes of the 3 people, Li Daoyuan lightly smiled. Pointing at the chaotic current of space and time, he said in a low voice, "Behind the chaotic current of space and time is a space created by a heavenly sovereign expert. It is also the secret location of the spiritual Sky City's Alchemist Guild. Inside the spatial zone was the reward for every champion. If I want to open it, I need the ancestors' approval. I am also using my power for personal gain to bring the 3 of you here. In order to defeat Li Zan, there is nothing I can do. I have already told you about the reward for the championship. It is a secret treasure that can strengthen the soul. Due to the powerful effect of that thing, there will be a trace of dissipation here. You will train here for the next 2 days and try to get it before the pill competition. Although it is impossible for your soul power to improve by a large margin. Hopefully, you will be able to fight Li Zan when the time comes." When Xiao Yan heard this, his spiritual strength surged out from between his brows. He could indeed sense something that caused his soul to be extremely excited in this spatial zone. Xiao Yu and Zhou Gushin also probed around and revealed a joyful expression. "Let's hurry up. Although it might be against the fairness of the competition, this is the only way to prevent those fellows from the mercenary corps from getting what they want." Li Daoyuan smiled bitterly and walked out. He swiped his palm across the wall and the wooden door disappeared. Seeing Li Daoyuan walk out of the room, the 3 of them didn't dare show any neglect. Xiao Yu sat cross-legged without saying a word. A huge soul force was emitted from between his eyebrows. To feel the strange feeling in this spatial zone, Xiao Yan could feel the strength of Xiao Yu's soul force. He couldn't help but be startled. This bastard's soul power. It was much stronger than his own. Interesting. This spiritual sky city is indeed a place with crouching tigers and hidden dragons, Xiao Yan muttered in his heart. Without further ado, he sat down with his legs crossed. Very quickly, his mood calmed down. After which, his soul energy was completely emitted from between his eyebrows, as he felt that faintly discernible thing that excited his soul. Zhou Gushan looked at Xiao Yan with some surprise. This fellow's soul energy was a little stronger than when he saw him 3 days ago. He was almost as strong as Zhou Gushan. When he thought about how Xiao Yan could concoct pills that were beyond his realm, Zhou Gushan shook his head and stopped thinking about these things. He also copied Xiao Yan and the other man and sat cross-legged, releasing his soul energy. In this narrow space, 3 powerful soul forces were chasing each other. They were fighting to feel that strange soul energy. In the alchemist station, Ji Yun carefully looked at the information of the pill competition's contestants. He couldn't wrap his head around the unbelievable feeling. The hand that was holding the information was trembling. What was going on this year? There were so many experts. There were a total of 408 participants, and there were 33 alien realm soul and above experts. 33 seemed like a small number, but compared to the previous batch's 14 participants, it was more than 2 times the number. What was even more unbelievable was that there were so many experts in this year's competition, and there were a total of 408 participants, and 33 of them were alien realm soul and above. There was actually a mid-alien realm soul monstrous genius who represented the mercenary corps in the competition. Li Zan. Ji Yun took a deep breath, then smiled bitterly. He estimated that all the leaders were looking at the information about the participants. He wondered what their expressions were, and if they were shocked. Pa! The information sheet in Shi Sheng's hand fell to the ground. The 5 young men around him were shocked when they saw this. One of the cold-looking young men with a scar on his face said, "Teacher, what's wrong?" Shi Shen's mouth trembled. He opened his mouth and said with a bitter smile, 33. Haha, has this year's batch gone crazy? Middle period of alien stage. Haha, ha ha ha. Where did the mercenary corps in Wushan City find such a genius alchemist? He has actually reached the middle period of alien stage. This time, the Spirit Heaven Mansion's mercenary corps will be the champion. Yu Dong looked at the information sheet in his hand. Due to his wild joy, his voice was trembling. Fu Qing accepted Yu Dong's information sheet, but he wasn't as excited as he had imagined. All he felt was a sense of defeat. He was also an alchemist of mercenary corps. This Li Zan was actually so powerful. Furthermore, his ranking in the last batch of the pill competition was 21. This time, he was ranked 33rd among the alien realm soul alchemists. When he thought of this, Fu Qing couldn't help but furrow the information sheet in his hand. In the Spiritual Sky City's Alchemist Association, Li Daoyuan, Hua Yan, and some other elders looked at the information sheet in their hands and were incomparably shocked. After that, they became incomparably worried. If that kid named Li Zan won the competition with such high quality, it would be even more disadvantageous for the Spirit Heaven Mansion's Alchemist Association. The reputation of the Spirit Heaven Mansion will depend on the 3 of you. Taking a long breath, Li Daoyuan couldn't help but clench his fists. His eyes were flickering with a complicated light. 2 inches Weng. The continuous ringing of the huge bronze bell rang in everyone's ears. In a grand hall located at the center of Spiritual Sky City, an old man was sitting on the top of the hall. His 2 fingers were slowly tapping on the huge bronze bell. With every strike of the old man, the sound that resounded throughout the entire city was slowly emitted. Finally, the day of the pill competition has arrived. The old man sighed softly. After pondering for a moment, he turned his gaze to an extremely spacious square in the north. That was the venue of pill competition. At this moment, along with the sound of the bell, the streets and alleys of Spiritual Sky City were filled with crowds of people who were going to watch the competition. They rushed towards the square like a flood. It was bustling with noise and excitement. The quality of this year's competition seems to be a little better than the previous one, he muttered softly. The old man looked at the square in the distance and mumbled to himself, "It might come. I wonder who it will be." As he spoke, the old man suddenly struck the enormous bell. After which, the space behind him slowly split apart. The old man's figure gradually disappeared. Only the even louder and louder bell sound resounded throughout the entire city. Spiritual Sky City's Alchemist Guild. Li Daoyuan looked at the 3 young men in front of him. Although it had only been 2 days, he could still vaguely feel a slight change in these 3 young men, especially Xiao Yan and Xiao Yu. This feeling was even stronger than before. Li Daoyuan let out a light breath. Without asking anything, he waved his sleeve and said in a serious tone, "Let's go to the meeting hall of pill competition." Xiao Yan and the other two did not say anything. They nodded with indifferent expressions. After following Li Daoyuan out of the entrance of the association, Li Daoyuan waved his sleeve and brought the three of them into the sky, heading towards the meeting hall not far away. Spiritual Sky City's Mercenary Corps. Along with the ringing of the bell, a blue-haired youth stood at the entrance of the Mercenary Corps. He looked at the huge square not far away and revealed a cold smile. He put away the folding fan in his hand. Li Zan laughed and said, "Let's go. Follow me to win the championship." "Yes," the two youths who followed Li Zan said respectfully. They hurriedly followed behind Li Zan. Li Zan turned his head and looked at the two middle-aged men beside him. He said faintly, "Let's go." Both of them, the two middle-aged men, did not dare to be neglectful when they heard this. Powerful origin monarch chis gushed out from their bodies. They wrapped around Li Zan and the other two men, and in the next moment, the five of them had already soared into the sky and rushed towards the square. When the members of the Mercenary Corps of Spirit Sky saw this, they were all extremely excited. Then, under the lead of the deputy commander, they rushed towards the square. This time, the pill competition could not afford to miss this opportunity. It was almost certain that Li Zan would win the championship. At that time, it would be the best time to mock the Alchemist Guild. At the Alchemist Guild's headquarters, under the lead of their respective leaders, nearly 400 young men walked towards the square of pill competition. There was naturally a special path from the Alchemist Association to the square of pill competition. Along the way, guards who were maintaining the public order could be seen everywhere. Even the Emperor-level guards were not uncommon. This fully demonstrated the powerful strength of Spiritual Sky City. "Teacher, Xiao Yan hasn't come back since the registration. Nothing will happen to him, right?" Fu Zan, who was following behind Ji Yun, suddenly said. Bai Qian, who was standing beside him, heard him and stared at Ji Yun with her beautiful eyes. "Ha ha, don't worry. That little fellow might be in the limelight during the competition," Ji Yun smiled. 2 days ago, someone from the Spiritual Sky City's Alchemist Association came to tell him about Xiao Yan. Naturally, it was very obscure. However, Ji Yun had also guessed a few things from what happened during the registration. Naturally, he was quite happy in his heart. No matter what, Spirit Sky City would not become the #1 place this time. However, it would be great if he could defeat that Li Zan. On the square of pill competition, there was a sea of people in the stands surrounding the square. At a glance, it was a sea of people. The shouts and voices were mixed together like thunder. Li Daoyuan had already brought Xiao Yan and the other two to the square. After giving them a few words of encouragement, Li Daoyuan left with Xiao Yu and Zhou Guxun. Xiao Yan also went to find Ji Yun and the other two. "How do you feel these past 2 days?" Seeing Xiao Yan leave, Li Daoyuan looked at Xiao Yu and Zhou Guxun. His expression was solemn as he spoke. Just as Xiao Yu was in deep thought, Zhou Guxun said with a bitter smile, "I'm sorry, Master Uncle. I have been in there for 2 days. Although I feel that my soul strength has improved a little, I'm afraid I still can't refine a grade 4 7-star medicine pill." His previous strength was roughly able to refine a tier 4, 6-star medicine pill that was at the peak. In these 2 days, it was likely that he would only be able to refine a peak tier 4 or 6-star medicine pill at most. As for 7 stars, the difficulty was still too great. "It's good that you've improved. At this critical juncture, even a little bit more strength is good," Li Daoyuan comforted. Zhou Guxun smiled bitterly and didn't say anything else. Just like Li Daoyuan, he looked at Xiao Yu who was standing beside him. It's about the same. Before I use my real strength, I am not sure how strong I am." Xiao Yu looked up and said calmly. Li Daoyuan took a deep breath when he heard that. He heard Xiao Yu's tone. He had the strength to challenge Li Zan. This was what Li Daoyuan had hoped for. What about Xiao Yan? Li Daoyuan, who had calmed down, thought for a while and asked again. If someone could defeat Li Zan, he naturally hoped that it would be Xiao Yu. However, that little guy was an alchemist who had reached the level of 3-step soul transfer, and no one knew how far he had reached. Xiao Yu frowned, which was a rare sight. He nodded slightly and said, "I feel that his soul power is a little weaker than my students'. However, his soul power is really powerful. It is as if he has been through some kind of training." Li Daoyuan frowned when he heard Xiao Yu's vague words. Could it be that the 3-step soul transfer soul was like this? After a fruitless thought, Li Daoyuan stopped thinking about him. After giving the two of them a few words of advice, Li Daoyuan's figure had already disappeared. As the chairman of the Spiritual Sky City's Alchemist Association, he naturally had to attend the opening ceremony of the pill competition. After Li Daoyuan's figure disappeared, Zhou Gushan finally couldn't help but ask, "Senior brother, are you really confident that you can defeat Li Zan?" After listening to Zhou Gushan's question, Xiao Yu's expression didn't change. The fighting spirit in his eyes became increasingly high. After a long while, he finally said word by word, "Even if I have to fight with my life on the line. We also want the pill competition's champion to be in the Spiritual Sky City." Then, he said with a sigh, "Let's go and find Lu Ying and the others. Don't think about anything. Adjust your mentality well. If we lose to them in the first match, it would be useless to say anything." As he spoke, Xiao Yu was the first to walk over. Zhou Gushan was stunned for a moment. After that, he let out a light sigh and followed Xiao Yu. It was easy to find the location of Spirit Sky City in a corner of the venue. When Ji Yun saw Xiao Yan, instinctively, he noticed that Xiao Yan seemed to have changed a little, but he couldn't say it out loud. Ji Yun was smart enough not to ask about Xiao Yan's experiences in the past 2 days. Fu Zan and Bai Qian weren't fools either. Similarly, they didn't ask stupidly. When Xiao Yan saw this, and threw the bullshit out of the way. When the last sound of the bell gradually faded, the 5 cauldrons in the square of pill competition suddenly shot out 5 fiery lights that shot into the sky. After that, the fiery light covered the sky above the square of pill competition like a meteor. Soon after, the fiery light dissipated, leaving only the words Alchemist Competition hanging in the sky. Everyone, a loud shout carrying the Origin Monarch Chi slowly resounded in the ears of tens of thousands of people, causing the noisy crowd to quieten down. Then, in the center of the square, 408 crystal platforms rose up in an instant, neatly arranged in a row. Under the sunlight, the 408 crystal platforms lit up. At the same time that the crystal platforms rose up, Li Daoyuan had already led many elders of the Alchemist Association to appear in the square. He cupped his hands towards the crowd and said in a long voice, "I, the chairman of the Spiritual Sky City Alchemist Association, Li Daoyuan, thanks all of you for watching the competition." Next, the first round of competition was about to begin. Participants, please stand by the corresponding crystal platform according to the number plate that you have given out. Quote, 2. After Li Daoyuan gave the order, all the alchemists from different cities rushed into the venue with the number plates they had just received, looking for their crystal tables. Xiao Yan's number plate was number 54, and on his right was an ordinary-looking young man wearing a gray alchemist robe. On his left was a young man wearing a gray alchemist robe. It was Yu Cheng, who had been knocked down by Xiao Yan when he wanted to tease Bai Qian that day. Yu Cheng looked at Xiao Yan with a gloomy face and let out a cold snort. He gave Xiao Yan a thumbs up and then pointed his thumb downwards. His eyes were filled with disdain. He had also read about Xiao Yan and the information he had. Although he was surprised by Xiao Yan's age, he naturally snorted. He was also an alien realm soul, and he firmly believed in his own age. He could absolutely crush Xiao Yan. Looking at Yu Cheng's self-righteous actions, there wasn't a single ripple in Xiao Yan's heart. There was no need to pay attention to this idiot. The first round of the competition was about to begin. It was easy to say that this competition was easy, but it was also difficult to say that it was enough to eliminate an alien realm soul genius alchemist. Right now, the most important thing was to adjust his attitude. Alright, all the participants are in position. I believe that all of you know the rules of the first round. Almost 20 different medicinal herbs and medicine pills will appear on the table. Within a certain period of time, all of you will recognize them one by one and use your soul power to carve their names onto the soul-reflecting tablet on your left. Then place it into the crystal slot. If you miss more than 3, you will be eliminated. An old man beside Li Daoyuan took over Li Daoyuan's words and spoke in a low voice. After which, he waved his sleeve and a huge hourglass the height of 3 people appeared in the middle of the square. Now, the competition begins. Following the old man's order, a red light flashed across the 480 crystal platforms at the same time. After which, different pictures appeared on each crystal platform. The pictures were of various medicinal ingredients and medicine pills. At the same time, the hourglass in the middle also began to count down. A gurgling sand flow quickly flowed down, indicating the flow of time. The tens of thousands of people on the viewing platform held their breaths and focused their attention. The 400-plus people on the arena also began to identify in an orderly manner. Li Daoyuan and nearly 10 others also left in a flash and sat on the judges' seats at the side of the arena. This year's competition is really interesting. A monstrous genius with a middle period of alien stage soul, and an 8-year-old alien realm soul. I'm afraid it's even more intense than the previous one. On the judges' seats, a middle-aged man in a black robe with a square face chuckled and spoke in a low voice. Hua Yan, who was sitting next to the middle-aged man, smiled bitterly and said, "It's not just the previous batch. The standard of this batch is so high that even that time, they are no match for it." The middle-aged man pondered for a moment when he heard this. He mumbled to himself, "That batch." After saying this, his eyes looked towards the sky above the square without leaving any traces behind. He quietly sighed and did not say anything else. Xiao Yan looked at the picture that appeared on the crystal platform. Different medicinal ingredients were arranged evenly in a row. Xiao Yan calmed his heart and carefully observed the medicinal ingredients on the picture. His mind quickly recalled the information that Elder Yi had sent him. He quickly eliminated all useless information and the name of a medicinal ingredient appeared in his mind. He took the soul-reflecting tablet, and soul power surged out from between his eyebrows. It turned into an incorporeal soul knife and began to carve the name of the herb on the tablet. When his soul came into contact with the tablet, he felt a huge resistance. Xiao Yan couldn't help but exclaim softly. He immediately understood the purpose of this match. It was not only to test the basic knowledge of an alchemist, but also to eliminate those with low soul strength. Raising his head, he saw that there were indeed some alchemists in front of crystal platforms. Some of them looked at the stone slab with red faces and didn't know what to do. They laughed in their hearts. Xiao Yan's eyes focused slightly. The strength of the soul knife suddenly increased, and the name of the herb was easily carved on the stone slab. As a genius of Ningxing City, Yu Cheng naturally carved the name of one herb onto the stone slab with ease. Turning his head, he saw that Xiao Yan had already completed the names of 2 herbs. He let out a cold snort and immediately started to engrave the name of the second herb on the stone slab. "This is Jade Devil's Beard, good fellow. This is a high-grade medicinal ingredient used to refine some Tier 7 medicine pills. It is actually placed here as a competition prop." Looking at the picture of an old man with a snow-white beard, Xiao Yan could not help but sigh. This thing was extremely rare. Even some of the city's alchemist guild leaders present probably did not know that it had actually appeared here. This competition is really full of danger and opportunity. Those who are lucky encounter a bunch of low-grade medicinal herbs and easily pass. Those who are unlucky encounter a few high-grade medicine pills, medicinal herbs, and can only stare blankly. While thinking in his heart, Xiao Yan's hands did not slow down. Very quickly, he carved the names of the remaining few medicinal herbs onto the stone slab. "What is this?" Looking at the last round medicine pill, which had a purple-red color and a blue-black color, Xiao Yan frowned. He could not help but slow down his movements. This medicine pill was obviously not one of the Zhao Qingshans he had seen before. Even the introduction of the medicine pill in the information he had obtained from Zhao Qingshan regarding alchemists was mentioned. He had never seen such a medicine pill before. Buzz. Just as Xiao Yan was deep in thought, a buzzing sound suddenly came from a crystal platform in the distance. Then, the surface of the crystal platform, which was made of white jade, emitted a bright red light. Under the contrast of more than 400 crystal platforms, it looked extremely dazzling. Everyone couldn't help but look up. They saw Li Zan, who was standing in front of the crystal platform with his hands behind his back, looking at the people around him with disdain. When they heard the cheers coming from somewhere in the stands, the people on the judges' seats frowned. Li Daoyuan stroked his beard and said, "It seems like this kid is not an ordinary person." Hua Yan sighed and said in a low voice, "Look at the color of the red light. That kid got it all right. In this competition, I specially put in the Jade Devil Beard. The profound clear pill, these few extremely rare things. I never thought that this guy would not encounter any of them." Li Daoyuan's face twitched as he said, "You really dare to do that? Even some of the elders don't know about these things. If Xiao Yu and the others were to encounter them, wouldn't that mean that they would pick up a stone and throw it at their own feet?" Right at this moment, a red light that wasn't any weaker than Li Zan's suddenly burst out from the crystal platform in front of Xiao Yu. Xiao Yu stood up with a calm expression after he answered all of the questions. He glanced at Li Zan, who seemed very pleased with himself, then turned his eyes to Zhou Gushan and the others. After the two of them were done, the tables in front of some alchemists started to glow with different colors of red light. Yu Chang looked at Xiao Yan, who was still thinking hard. He smiled with disdain in his heart and put the stone slab into the crystal groove. In the next moment, a red light appeared on the crystal platform. Seeing the brightness of the red light, Yu Chang couldn't help but feel shocked. He actually made two mistakes. After letting out a slight humph, Yu Chang looked at Xiao Yan, who was frowning, and immediately felt much better. As more and more sand appeared in the bottom part of the hourglass, sweat began to appear on Ji Yun's forehead. Red light appeared on Fu Zan and Bai Qian's crystal platforms. The latter's red light even reached the most adequate stage, but the crystal platform in front of Xiao Yan still didn't light up. Similarly, when the red light lit up, there were naturally several green lights flashing. Those alchemists who saw the green light flashing on the platforms in front of them had pale faces. When the green light appeared, they immediately turned green. This meant that they had been eliminated in the first round. What's wrong with Xiao Yan? Li Daoyuan looked at Xiao Yan with his sharp eyes and frowned. If they couldn't even pass the first round, then all their efforts in the past 2 days would be wasted. Who? Xiao Yan let out a light breath. His eyes swept across the hourglass that was about to arrive. The corner of his mouth revealed a helpless, bitter smile. He had really tried his best. He repeatedly recalled the information Elder Yi had given him about the medicine pill, but he still couldn't find any information about this medicine pill in front of him. It's still a superficial knowledge. Clenching his teeth, Xiao Yan had no choice but to put the stone slab into the crystal trough. The crystal platform instantly emitted a brilliant red light. Xiao Yu, who was far away, saw the color of the red light. Without saying a word, he looked at the former. Zhou Gushan and the others also looked over. When they saw the light on Xiao Yan's crystal platform, they all let out a sigh of relief. According to their teacher, this guy was a genius who had the ability to fight Li Zan. If he was eliminated in the first match, it would be unbelievable. Bai Qian, Fu Zan, Ji Yun, and the others also heaved a sigh of relief when they saw this. Their nervous hearts gradually recovered, and they waited for the match to end. Li Daoyuan looked at the helpless Xiao Yan, then looked at the hourglass in the middle. He then stood up and said in a vigorous voice, "Time is up. Those in front of you who are green or without light, all of you will be eliminated."